Future of smart cities. My name is Bill Allen. I'm the CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all here this morning and very impressed by how prompt you all are in being here. We're actually starting about a minute early, which is unusual for these events. You are also the largest audience we've had for a Future Forum. Each of our Future Forums continues to grow in attendance and in impact and in the social conversation, and we invite all of you to join in that social conversation using the hashtag LAEDC Future Forum, because this is an important conversation for all of us in our region. For those of you who don't know, the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, or LAEDC for short, exists really to advance opportunity and prosperity for all of the residents of Los Angeles County. We provide collaborative economic development research in an effort to grow a globally competitive, prosperous, and continually growing Los Angeles County economy. We do this to improve the health and well-being of our residents and our communities, and to help ensure that all of LA County's residents can meet their basic human need for a job. We achieve this through objective economic research, through strategic assistance to government and business, and through targeted public policy. Our efforts are guided and supported by the expertise and counsel of our members and partners who represent a broad array of stakeholders throughout the entire Southern California region. The LAEDC was founded back in 1981 by the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors to leverage the participation of the private sector alongside our county government to enable this more prosperous, more diverse, more sustainable, more broadly shared economic prosperity in this region. In more recent years, the LAEDC has taken on an additional role of helping to develop and implement a series of 5-year strategic plans for regional economic development. In 2015, we brought together again many hundreds of civic stakeholders, civic stewards, representing the different voices across Los Angeles County to create the current 2016 to 2020 5-year strategic plan for economic development, which is now known as Propel LA and led by Marianne Haverhill. Marianne, if you're here, raise your hand, please. Where's Marianne? Over there. Marianne's sitting there. Marianne is leading the implementation effort with hundreds of partners throughout the region to improve the quality of life in the region, to advance the economy, to build our industry clusters, to advance innovation, to modernize infrastructure, to build more livable communities, to engage in the education and preparation of all of our residents participate in this truly nation-sized regional economy. And today's forum on the future of smart cities aligns well with the key tenets of that strategic plan. Smart city planning requires participation from government, the private sector, academic entities, and the public. Ultimately, a smart city optimizes city functions and powers economic growth in order to improve both the quality of government services and the welfare of its residents. Los Angeles County is making the boldest, most transformative investments in transportation in North America today. We know our region will be reshaped as this era of smart cities is ushered in, but we must collectively engage in this transformation in order to ensure that it benefits all constituencies and stakeholders in our region. Our panel this morning, a truly outstanding array of thought leaders and experts on this subject to whom we're very grateful for their participation. We'll discuss the integration of information and communication technologies and the Internet of Things as cities transform themselves in the new era of developing urban regions as smart cities. We're delighted that all of you are here with us this morning, and we're particularly grateful to our Executive Committee member and presenting sponsor, California State University, Dominguez Hills, for the foresight of the university and their distinguished president in bringing these forums to the public and serving as our LAEDC Future Forum Series sponsor since the beginning of this series. Thank you to President Hagan and his team for making these conversations possible. They know that in order to keep Los Angeles County competitive in the global economy, we must stay connected to the technological innovations and advancements that are happening now and leading us into the future, particularly the future of smart cities. I also want to thank and acknowledge Susan Stone and Mike Quindazzi from PricewaterhouseCoopers for their commitment to helping us look into the future of our thriving industries. They provide this series with unparalleled expertise with their extraordinary team of researchers and analysts and thought leaders. Thank you to Susan and Mike for empowering our work in this subject. Before we get our program started, I'd like to invite to the stage our host today from Cross Campus. Please welcome Julia Mancias, the head of membership for Cross Campus, to just tell us a little bit about Cross Campus and this great facility, because we're terrifically excited to be here, and we want more of you to know about this great resource in our community. Would you welcome Julia Mancias?
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody feeling? Good? Caffeinated? Cross Campus, for anybody who's unfamiliar with us and what we do, we're an LA-based and homegrown co-working space. We're very excited to have LA EDC back with us. We've hosted a couple of their events in the past. We have 4 locations, so Santa Monica, here in downtown LA, Old Pasadena, and we are opening our 4th on February 1st, so in just a couple weeks, in El Segundo. We have about 1,000 members across LA, and we opened our doors to really become a hub for the startup tech community. In the last 5 years, we've expanded the industries that are members with us, from Fortune 500 companies to law firms, architects. It's all over the place. It's a really vibrant community of members that come into our doors every single day to work together, to collaborate, and to kind of lift each other up when they're going through the tough times. So if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about Cross Campus, I'm going to be hanging out after the event. I'll be up at the front desk. We're also offering 1 free month of co-working to everybody in the audience, so you can come out and experience the space firsthand. There's a marketing table towards the door. You just drop your information in there, and we will reach out with more details. Thanks so much, and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much, Julia, for hosting us this morning and for that 1 free month of membership. I'm sure all of our guests today appreciate that. Now I'd like to introduce our presenting sponsor of this series and partner in these future forums and give him a proper introduction. Let me first start by saying Cal State University Dominguez Hills is a diverse, welcoming community of learners and educators, collaborating to change lives and communities for the better. With strong academic programs, dedicated faculty mentors, supportive staff, many campus amenities, CSU Dominguez Hills is committed to connecting students to high quality and transformative education, while providing our communities with a vital resource for talent, knowledge, skills, and leadership needed to thrive today and tomorrow. They are truly helping power our regional economy. I want to welcome the 10th president of this fine institution that provides so much access and opportunity to so many residents of our region and transforms their lives in the process. Will you join me in welcoming President Willie Hagan?
Thank you, Bill, for that kind introduction. Someone asked me while I was out in the audience, why do we sponsor these events? And I have all kinds of nice formal answers, but the reality is that if you're an educator, you love to be educated yourself. And I actually get a lot out of these forums. But in terms of the university and why I think it's important for us to be part of this, if you look at the 6th, I think this is our 6th one of these, if you look at the topics that have been covered, we've done cybersecurity and the impact of that on the workforce. We looked at the changing face of the health economy and how that's being impacted by technology. We looked at the world of work. We looked at the convergence of technology and media and its impact on the entertainment industry. And we looked at, what was the last one? Cybersecurity? Healthcare. So you always have your friends in the audience. Yeah, but there's a common theme that runs through all of those workshops and forums, and including this one. And it's about the impact on technology, on the world of work. The world of work, both as a business or industry leader, the world of work in terms of the cities, and the world of work in higher education is being impacted tremendously by what's happening through technology, through the use of information analytics and communicating that for the best decision-making possible. But it's not just the world of work that's changing. It's the workforce itself that's being changed by the nature of technology. The workforce has to change in terms of being able to participate in where we're going. But for a university, we also recognize that the workforce is being shaped by changes in the demography, that you have an increased population of women entering the workforce, you have an increased population of underrepresented minorities entering the workforce, and again, all the technology aspects of what we've been talking about in these future forums, relate back to the STEM fields. The research shows clearly that women and minorities are the lowest percentage of participants in those fields. Yet those fields are projected to have the highest job growth in the future. Those fields are projected to have the highest income growth in the future. Our campus is 65 to 67% female. Our campus is 85% underrepresented minorities. So these fields have the lowest percentages of women and minorities, and if we're to do our job as an institution in helping transform the communities that we work in, and helping meet the needs of the business industry in terms of providing the workforce, then we need to make sure that as an institution we understand where the future is going in terms of needs, and we need to make sure that we work hard to make sure that women and minorities have a chance to participate in these fields, because again, if we're not successful in that area, in that arena, you don't get the workforce that you need to be successful. So our participation is, as I said, threefold: my personal enjoyment, the role of the university in helping shape the workforce and in helping meet the needs of the workforce, but also the third part is understanding what is happening in the business community, what's happening in our industries, and understanding the impact of technology and making sure that we play the partnership role that we should in meeting those needs. So again, welcome. We're glad to be a partner here. We hope you're going to enjoy it. In fact, no, it's not a matter of hope. I know you're going to enjoy these because every forum has been excellent, and we could not have had a better partner than Bill Allen and the LAEDC team, and Marilyn McPolian from our campus, who's worked closely with them and organized events. So enjoy yourselves, and look forward to talking with you after the event. Thank you very much.
May I now introduce Elsa Flores, who's our Vice President of Strategic Relations, who invites so many of you to membership and partnership with the LADC, and who's one of the great networkers and connectors in our region, and who has invited the panelists, along with her colleague Rick Molis and Mark Nicholson, who's invited the great speakers and panelists here this morning. I would like her to be able to introduce them to you. Please welcome Elsa Flores.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Bill. I also just want to thank California State University Dominguez Hills for their vision, for their partnership and support. I'll never forget Willie Hagan when in 2016 at the executive committee meeting, he stood up and said, we should have forums about the future. And this is what's happened. So thank you for that legacy, President Hagan. Really appreciate it. So I'm really excited to get the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. If you haven't heard him speak, you're going to be in for a treat. And if you have heard him speak, you know what I'm talking about. The definition of a global citizen is a person with a belief in a better world and spread their passion for progress in communities and countries across the globe, building movements that change society forever. And you're about to meet one such global citizen. His life journey has the makings of an Academy Award-winning movie. From living in a Cold War flat in New York to working as a messenger on Wall Street and cleaning mouse cages at a lab, to leading the famed World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, to advising heads of state and government and CEOs around the globe. John Rassant now leads a global nonprofit institute dedicated to improving the quality of life and work in cities. Most recently, he founded LA Commotion, the world's first 5-day mobility event featuring autonomous driving mobility and more, and he chose Los Angeles to have this event. Please give a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, founder and chairman of the New Cities Foundation, a global citizen, Mr. John Rassant.
Well, Elsa, you're really making me blush. It's such an early hour in the morning, but thank you very much for that kind introduction. I want to thank this morning my good friends at the LAEDC. Bill, your team is absolutely remarkable. You're doing an amazing job to promote economic development in this most remarkable urban reality, I think, anywhere on the planet. true city of the future, which is Los Angeles. And by Los Angeles, of course, I mean this great region, a geographic reality with scores of municipalities and a diversity and a population and an economy that exceed those of many independent countries around the world. And in fact, as a recent immigrant to this wonderful city, the way I understand LA now, I think of it as a country, this big area. I think of it like Switzerland or like Israel, where we would go to Zurich tonight and then maybe to Geneva tomorrow, or Haifa this morning and then Tel Aviv tonight. That's how you think, have to think of Los Angeles. But the subject today is the future of LA as a smart city, as a smart urban region. The organization I lead, the New Cities Foundation, we're a global nonprofit research organization looking at the future of cities, precisely. We're based in Montreal, and we work with a very wide variety of public and private institutions, running from Google, Cisco, Ericsson, Citibank, many private sector, smaller private companies, along with other nonprofits, research institutions like MIT and Ashoka, Ford Foundation. Our mission, as Elsa mentioned, is to make cities that are more connected, more vibrant, more equitable, and more healthy. And I really like how Bill mentioned well-being, because we absolutely think that well-being is what cities need to be about, ultimately. But we look very, very, very closely. How do I do this like that? No? Ah, voila. No, not. We look very, very closely at technology and the impact on cities of transformative and historically unprecedented disruptions that have been sweeping over our world since the beginning of the digital revolution a decade, 2 decades ago. But if we have our own point of view, it is that we strongly believe technology is a means and not an end, that we must never lose sight of the fact that it really is about people. Cities are about people, and that you can't just go for efficiency without ignoring well-being and health and things like that. So I say this because I want to set the context for a brief discussion on 2 connected themes. What do we mean by smart cities? And what is the future of Los Angeles as a so-called smart city? And I should start by saying that at the New Cities Foundation, internally, we actually never use the term smart cities. It's not that it's anathema, it's just we think it's very, very overused, and we think all cities by definition have to be smart and savvy and deal with data to survive. But by a smart city, we mean enabling the city to understand itself better by the thorough and thoughtful collection of data and data sets, and the creation of more accessible, more effective urban services and tools derived from that data. And this can and will have, is having a huge impact on every aspect of our urban lives. Already, if you think of the supercomputer that we all have in our pockets, namely the smartphone, this, above all, is a digital tool for unlocking the potential of a city. If you think of the apps that we all have on smartphones, hopefully Google Maps, Waze, Yelp, Uber, Lyft, Amazon, these are all tools to unlock a city, from security, health, democratic processes even, mobility. These are connectivity technologies are bringing cities big and small into a completely new era. And I would make the point, in passing, by the way, that I personally believe that one of the reasons why Los Angeles, in some ways, has become such a buzzy and cool and compelling city of the 21st century is that for the first time, because of these technologies, this is an intelligible, readable urban reality for outsiders like myself, although now I think I'm starting to be a little bit of an insider. Because thanks to geolocalization, and GPS, and ride-hailing apps like Uber and Lyft, the entirety of LA is now accessible, it's understandable, it's readable. You're simply never lost again. And that's a really, really big difference from maybe 5 years ago. When I used to come out to LA, I hated it. I got off the plane. I didn't understand the place. It was completely, wait, what? I have to rent a car? And, where is Mid-City? Hollywood? Why is West Hollywood a difference? That's no longer the case. But what we're talking about when we talk about smart cities, I think, is developing a new operating system for cities. And let me explain. If you think of our cars, they're now collecting and processing enormous amounts of data. They're computers. Our streets outside have sensors. Our street lighting systems have sensors, employ AI capabilities. Our phones, our bikes, the objects we use are all now virtual computers talking to each other incessantly, gathering data, transmitting data. Streets are becoming smarter and more adaptive. Ubiquitous micro cameras provide extraordinarily detailed and real-time mapping of just about everything. So, in essence, each city, in our view, will be creating and must create what is nothing less than a physical version of the online world that has grown up in the last 2 decades. Let's say beginning with Netscape's introduction of the first consumer web browser in 1994. Since then, if you think of it, web designers have been grappling with constraints of bandwidth, traffic, trying to get intuitive customer interfaces. Today, we live in a world that is going from moving bits of data, to moving matter and molecules, to moving things. And if you think about it, city planners and city administrators are today facing exactly the same kinds of issues as they build an operating system for cities, as web designers once did. How do we make intuitive human-machine interfaces? How do we make sure that we have the necessary bandwidth to cope with the myriad of urban services that we need? And we see already that there can be and will be very different models of these operating systems for smart cities as we go around the world. It depends on the particular DNA of a city. It depends on the particular political geography of a city or country. Some cities, I think, are going to seek to own and dominate their own operating systems. Others will let the private sector take the lead. If you take Dubai, for example, which is a shining new metropolis in the Persian Gulf, it's often seen as the model for a 21st century smart cities, and in many ways it is. I suspect many of you have been there, but it's a smart city by decree, a very top-down approach. It's driven by the office of Sheikh Mohammed, who's the ruler. His ambitious Smart Dubai roadmap has, over the past few years, helped launch hundreds of smart services, spanning from governance, mobility, economy, et cetera. It's an amazing place, as I know my friend Rahul will talk about in a little bit, has a lot of experience in Dubai. They're launching an autonomous aerial taxi at the end of the year. So it's really quite dramatic. The police department there has transferred 100% of its services to AI-enabled smart technology, allowing citizens, for example, to process their traffic violations online or to report accidents online. Dubai announced recently that it intends to become blockchain capital of the world, precisely to utilize blockchain to have better, more transparent, more accountable city services. And that will happen this year, apparently. European cities like Paris, which is where I lived for quite a few years, Copenhagen, Stockholm, etc., they're another model. They're still largely top-down, but with a much higher degree of citizen involvement, reflecting Europe's democratic traditions. But Anne Hidalgo, who's the mayor of Paris, for example, can still single-handedly decree that by 2024, when Paris hosts the Olympics, as you know, all diesel cars will be banned from the city. In 2030, just 12 years from now, Mayor Hidalgo has pushed through laws forbidding the use of any internal combustion engine powered vehicle, which is amazing. That's 12 years from now. Last year, in an overnight move, Paris permanently closed down the motorway along the Seine River, which is the big connector through the city, which would be the equivalent, say, of Mayor Garcetti waking up and announcing that from tomorrow on, the 405 would be for pedestrian traffic and bicycles only. Well, I don't know if you support that, but I can only imagine the reaction here. So we come to the American model, or the LA model, and that is a much, much, much more bottom-up model that reflects our governance traditions in our country. It reflects the noisy and sometimes very messy democracy in which we live. But things do get done. And in this city, which invented car culture, the fact that 71% of LA County voters voted to pass Measure M in November 2016, raising billions of dollars for public transportation infrastructure throughout the county. Well, as we say back in New York, who would have thunk? So I think things do take longer in the United States and American cities, but when we start to move, I think it could be extraordinary. Which gets me to the subject, my favorite subject, which is LA, and that's really why we're so excited about this region. Because LA is, in our view, stands at the very epicenter of the two great revolutions, which we think will fundamentally impact our societies and our economies and our cities in the years ahead. And these are what will make the evolution of LA as a smart city of the 21st century so fascinating and so important to watch. The first is the manufacturing revolution. I think this is something that is often overlooked. LA, as many of you are aware, is the most important manufacturing urban region in North America by far. This is a city which intrinsically understands how to make things. And this will be, I think, an incredibly important differentiator for the Angelino economy in the years ahead. Some say, and I happen to be a believer, that we are at the threshold of a fourth industrial revolution, which is, in fact, one of the big subjects at Davos this week, which I'm missing for one of the first times. The first industrial revolution, as you know, began in Britain in the 18th century, used water and steam power to mechanize production. The second industrial revolution, of course, used electric power to create mass production. The third, which we're still in, uses electronics and IT technology to automate production. We are now entering a fourth industrial revolution that builds on the third and blurs the lines between physical, digital, even biological spheres. It's about clean manufacturing, and it's also about a return of manufacturing to cities. And cities used to have that capability in the past. It was banished to big, multi-gazillion dollar factories on city outskirts. It's going to come back. We think that it will soon be entirely possible to manufacture sophisticated industrial products in the heart of a city. If you think of connected 3D printing at scale, for example. So if 21st century manufacturing will consist, I believe, of networks of small-scale urban factories able to profitably deliver sophisticated, low-cost, low-carbon products in highly customizable batches. That is a future that is in front of us. And I think LA is very, very well placed to be a leader in this race. We come to my favorite subject, which is the mobility revolution. And there is no doubt in my mind that Los Angeles will emerge as one of the most important global hubs of this revolution, which is so many ways at the heart of what it means to be a smart city. For over 100 years, if you think about it, the landscape of urban mobility really didn't budge at all. We've had private cars, more and more of them, buses, taxis, metro, light rail, depending on the city. Few people, mostly kids and teenagers, used bikes and skateboards and things like that. Now we are very swiftly moving into a new mobility world where vehicles are increasingly electric, where they're connected, they talk to each other, they talk to you, you call for an Uber or Lyft, your car automatically connects to a maintenance facility. Tomorrow, of course, or day after tomorrow possibly, cars will be driverless, and cars will also be increasingly shared. Yes, they will. And by the way, cars will also be airborne, some of them. And this mobility revolution, in so many ways, stands to be even more consequential and impactful than the IT revolution. The mobility revolution, as I like to say, often will reshape the geography of all our cities, will change the way we think about work and play, and alter our very notions of space and time and movement. Why will LA, the synonym for many, for traffic jams, lack of mobility, why will it lead the mobility revolution? Well, where do I start? I think, first of all, there's solid and smart and consistent political leadership in this region, from Mayor Garcetti and the City Council of Los Angeles to leaders, municipal leaders throughout LA County, my friend Salita Reynolds at LA DOT. It is really exceptional, and I think you should be rightfully proud of this leadership. Very, very important to have leaders in a city. Measure M, of course, we've talked about that, but it's acting as an enormous magnet to attract the best and brightest mobility groups from around the world. This is, after all, the biggest transportation infrastructure investment in North America. The manufacturing tradition, which I mentioned, and much of which derives from the fact that LA is, of course, a center of the aerospace industry. And we are now seeing so much of that expertise spill over to terrestrial mobility and terrestrial production. LA, of course, has also been the center of vehicular design for the global automotive industry. And of course, the world-class educational institutions around LA County, and I'm glad to see that one of them is sponsoring this great forum this morning. This series, so CSU, Caltech, USC, UCLA, the Art Center in Pasadena, SciArc, Pepperdine, it goes on, and few cities or few regions anywhere really can match this, and that is so important. And LA, of course, benefits from a thriving urban startup scene, which is producing amazing local actors, whether it's Snapchat or Divergent 3D, one of my favorite startups in LA, to hundreds of others. And lastly, and I know this will be discussed this morning, is the fact that we have an unprecedented 10-year runway in front of us to the 2028 Olympics. For any city to have that, a decade of preparation, is amazing. Because usually it's 4 years, a little bit more. And history has shown us that major events like this can have the potential to move a city and a region forward. For example, in our New Cities Foundation hometown of Montreal, the announcement in 1962 that the city would host the 1967 World's Fair provided the necessary political momentum to push through a whole mass transit system and created Montreal's young subway. And to this day, the extensive public transportation network remains, in the eyes of all those who live in Montreal, very tightly linked to Expo 67. So this is a long-winded way of saying that when the New Cities Foundation decided a few years ago that what the world really needs is an annual global event bringing together the leaders of this new emerging global ecosystem around new mobility, we looked at various places around the world, and there was really only one possible choice to have this event and conference, and that's LA, and that's why we came up with LA Commotion. We had our first edition in November, as many of you know, big success. We're now planning the next one. Welcome you all there in November. And with that, I want to just say thank you very much, and I will really enjoy meeting lots of you. And I wanted to perhaps just show you a very, very quick video about LA Commotion. Can we roll that? Someone? There we go. This is in the Arts District.
We want your products, your ideas, your vehicles, your visions, your ideas to come to this fertile ground and our test bed that is LA.
There's no more exciting place to be than Los Angeles. There's no more exciting place to be than Los Angeles.
This is a place that is
when it comes to transportation and mobility.
This is a place that is full of makers and creative folks and doers who are constantly reinventing the future.
To have LA Commotion here fits into my goal and the goal of this city to be the transportation technology capital of the world.
Make no mistake, this really is a revolution, a very real and hugely important revolution. And you, my friends, are revolutionaries.
The uniqueness of LA Commission is that it breaks the silos. You've got people from transit agencies, from tech companies, elected officials.
It creates sort of a real-time collider of some of the most creative minds and thinkers in mobility.
Certainly in London, people on the lowest incomes tend to suffer the worst consequences of the current arrangement.
Building a bicycle infrastructure is way cheaper than any other kind of infrastructure you're going to build.
We have also to continue our investment in the public transport.
It's that interaction, the magic that happens in the hallways or in front of the exhibits that really makes it so important for things like LA Commotion to happen right here in Los Angeles.
We're calling on people with lower limb paralysis to collaborate with us on the issues that need to be resolved.
One of the things I'm really most excited about at this first edition of LA Commotion was the launch of the Mobility Unlimited Challenge.
We either know someone with disability or we all might have a disability as we grow older.
Disability is such a taboo and there's not a lot of knowledge and support behind it.
When you start to consider what we design as solutions, it has to come from the universal design perspective.
How do we actually design something that is going to provide solutions to the broader community?
If you want to really impact mobility, you have to get down to the street corner. You have to get down to the curb.
I think the streets of LA in the next 10 years are going to be full of connected vehicles. It's not just going to be about the streets. I think you're going to see things in the air. You're going to see them in tunnels underground. And you're going to see many streets liberated for walking, biking, and everyday use.
LA Commotion will be this crucible of new thinking and new ideas about mobility coming from all around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think the takeaway was two things right now for me. It's the possibility of closing the 405 and making that a pedestrian and a bike route, what? And the autonomous aerial taxi in Dubai. That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, we do. Thank you so much. I'd like to introduce our featured speaker this morning. PricewaterhouseCoopers has served as a trusted partner to the LADC for many of our future-looking reports and presented numerous of our events. We are fortunate to have a dynamic expert in smart infrastructure here with us today. Rahul Gupta is leading major efforts on smart cities globally, assessing infrastructure needs and advising clients on information communication technology, and has spent over 15 years in the US government overseeing investment in infrastructure. In addition, Rahul is leading Pricewaterhouse's own transformation related to data, US and globally. Please welcome our featured presenter and trusted partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Rahul Gupta.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you to LADC, California State, my colleagues from PwC here, and as usual, John, great speech. Let's see. So, Future of cities, kind of like John, I don't tend to overuse smart cities because I like to meet a dumb city. Nobody wants to be told that you live in a dumb city. But there is something to be said about smart and how you get to it. The first thing I like to do is kind of set the stage for you here in the US and globally, because whatever happens in Los Angeles, whether you're driving the future or you're looking around the world and absorbing it, it's due to mega trends. Fundamentally changing the thinking around infrastructure and how our population and our citizens live. The first thing is demographic shift. People are aging. Most of the developments are happening outside North America. And because of aging and the growth in middle class, you've got some fundamental shifts also in economic power. So when we start thinking about 2050, we will move from billions of dollars on the West to trillions of dollars in the East. As you can imagine, some of the smart efforts, when you start thinking about Dubai, the Middle East, Shenzhen, China, you start looking at Singapore, you start looking at Hong Kong, most of those are in the East. And as their population grows and as their needs grow, we have to be mindful of what's happening around the world. Urbanization. By 2050, most of the population will be in urban centers. It's no longer the power of the rural area, it's really the power of the urban area. This is where you find jobs, this is where you find safety, this is where you find security, this is where you are able to actually aspire to dreams and actually execute them. So urbanization, a very big deal indeed on smart. Climate change. California has been a prime example of either its floods, you've got the soil shifting, you got fire, you got potential earthquake. But if you look at where the population is growing and why there's been migration and immigration, it's primarily because of climate change. Maslow's 4 basic things. If you are not drinking, eating, or have shelters, you don't have time to actually create value. So climate is actually changing the way we're thinking about the world. So how do we actually bring this to a close positively? It's the technology breakthroughs. We really have to take advantage of technology to help us solve those 4 problems. Just to give you an idea, the 3D printer was actually innovated, invented in 1984, actually in Montreal, in McGill. My first 3D printer was in 1994. How long did it take for the 3D printer to actually make it into your house or into your school? Similarly, 3D, AI, and virtual reality. My first 3D AI virtual helmet that I put on my head to actually think about how the military is going to use it was in 1995, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. 1995. How long does it take for the technology to actually make it into the hands of the consumer to truly make a difference? Think about 15, 20, 25 years. So the technology is coming into our hands, and how do we take advantage of it? But if you're not addressing this properly, there's a potential for the city to actually not be able to respond to the citizen needs if their problems are not properly addressed. Interdependence. We think about technology as something that stands alone. Nope, it's a complex system. It truly belongs in the hands of multiple players. John talked about the leadership. Leadership plays a key role in making sure that you're putting a vision in place that links the different things together. We're sitting here in a California State University institution. You have to have people who are knowledgeable, who are aware, who actually understand this. The fact that we're in an urban world also makes a complicated decision, because as people start moving into cities, you have to address their housing needs, their water needs, their power needs, the safety needs. And for a city, doing this without technology, without leadership, is complicated. The same things we could solve very simply now takes a lot more effort. And if you get it wrong for a lot of different reasons. So higher risk for same rewards. Not for higher rewards, same rewards. How do you address the risks? Failure is complicated, so is success. If you fail once, if you get one bridge wrong, if one bridge fails, especially one that carries something like 30,000 cars a day, what happens then? Resilience starts playing a big role. What are your alternative means of delivering that? Leanness. We tend to focus on cost, which sometimes is at odds what public policy and public good or social commons is all about. We are creating brittle supply chains. We want to feed the world. It takes 1,200 liters of water to generate 1 kilogram of grain. Think about putting people into a city and doing in such a way with a brittle food supply. Maybe one food supply, we're only just growing one type of gene source, which goes bad. Think about what that's going to do for energy if we don't take care of really building out a sustainable energy source. So, how do we do globally? You heard from John. And how do we do it in the United States? Let's populate those yellow dots. This is the cumulative grade in the United States for infrastructure. And for somebody who's been engaged in infrastructure for almost 30 years, it pains me to see that since the development of the infrastructure in the US during the Eisenhower era, we haven't really recapitalized it the way we could have or the way we should. Why is that? If you think about the former Soviet Union and Russia today, 12 time zones, just about every type of climate, one of the richest countries in terms of minerals and oils and whatnot, but yet the United States really led the world and still leads the world. Why? Transportation infrastructure. We could move goods east to west, north to south. We created a railway system, which still gets a B and it's on the way up. Really made a difference. You can buy strawberries whenever you want. You can buy lettuce whenever you want. You can buy apples whenever you want. That's not the case in other countries. Transportation and the ability to move, the supply chain and the logistic, the ability to move goods and services is key to success here. So the reason I highlighted bridges, roads, and transit is because when we talk about cities and smart cities, this is the number one question that I get asked. How do we address people's needs in transportation? We're tired of people actually losing money left and right. And that's true. Beyond the public policy, the leadership, there's a business argument to be made. There's a business argument to be made because this is the lifeblood of how cities survive. You can't just fund. Sometimes you have to finance. And often you have to do it in conjunction with the public sector and the private sector. So how would we think about bringing this to California, given that in 2028 we will have the Olympics here, and specifically in LA? So let's look at what's going on in the United States, from the United States to California. So we've got funding, financing, governance, and integration issues across the board in transportation infrastructure. This is the story of California today. So it's recent, 2017 report. I'm using a report that was actually covered on MSNBC, CNN today, because the administration is starting to make noises that their $1 trillion infrastructure funding is going to come across anytime soon. Can be soon enough, as far as I'm concerned. So whatever comes, small, big, medium, is going to be better than we've got today. How do we repair bridges? How do you repair the roads? How do you reduce the cost of not having the proper infrastructure? And how do you actually make sure that you address the shortfall in California? It's not just the role of the city of California, the state of California, it's all of our roles. It's going to take that integrative approach where the business sees a value, where the citizen sees their engagement. You have to speak up to be heard. And if you don't, decisions are going to be made. You have to be a participant. Otherwise, you're letting others decide your fate. But these are the things that are fundamental in the first step of infrastructure. Now think about it, going back one slide. I'm only touching on 3 things. When it comes to smart cities, all of these come into play. In September of last year, and then again in December of last year, Dubai took Volocopter, a German company, which Intel just bought, and they tested a flying taxi. They actually flew it out of a pad, 4 people. It's got 18 blades, 9 batteries. And I was in Dubai just last week talking to my team about how we're going to support the city of Dubai, build a flying taxi infrastructure by 2022. That's their goal. Actually have a flying taxi. 4 people, carry about 100 kilometers, fly for about an hour. Now think about everything that needs to be done there. You have to have a power infrastructure to charge the batteries. They want it to be green. You have to have pads. You have to think about zoning. You have to think about permitting. You have to think about rules, laws, safety, regulations. All of these things have to be put in place. But it is top down, it's by decree, so it'll get done. In a place like the United States, it has to be consensus. It takes a lot longer to actually do the environmental remediation study. It takes a lot longer to say that we'll be able to carry a human being safely. They are going to follow European and American rules to do so. They want to own it, and they want to deliver it. This was not a meeting to discuss about thinking about it. They have concrete plans where they want to address many of these topics on a flying taxi. Similarly with autonomous cars. So for California, to address this is going to be critical. And really pleased that John's taken on part of the ownership in trying to deliver that. So what are some of the solutions that we can think about in a city? We talk about ICT, but it's more than ICT, information communication technology. What are some of the solutions we can think about it? So where do you have artificial intelligence? We have next generation materials. We have connected cars. My first connected car, autonomous pod that I sat in was at the Warren Tech Center in Warren, Michigan, was in 2007. General Motors has a test center there where I sat in a car, driving by itself, going through the intersection, and then again in 2009. So technology is there. Technology is moving and changing every 6 months. Our laws change every 10 years. Something's got to give. So if we do not have educated people, we do not have people who are engaged, and we do not have the private sector engagement, it's very difficult to actually change something that was designed for a road system that is 30 years old to deal with a system today that can pretty much operate on its own. And I've got one of those potentially self-driving car, but you can't do it because the local laws and local rules don't allow it. On the other hand, you're dealing with virtual reality for healthcare. You're doing 3D printing. We have 4D printing today. One of my colleagues is working on a process by which you can take 12 chemicals and then mix the chemicals in a particular order to create local medicine. Think about actually being able to do that. You have a drone that drops the supplies in the middle of area that cannot be supported by the local infrastructure, and you can actually produce medication. Clearly, it has impact on patents. It has impact on supply chain, sourcing. It has impact on safety, but it's out there. Robots that do a lot of work, big conversation about what does it mean for our workforce, and then finally a smart house or a smart building. Concrete that talks, concrete that feels, concrete that can be lighted, concrete that heats. I was in Singapore, and they have a project where they want to build the smartest building ever made. And they want to think about materials that actually feel, touch, do things that usually a human being has to look at the data and the analytics to do so. Something completely different than anybody's thought about. So how does a city actually take care of digital, machine-to-machine, cloud and big data? software-defined network, all of these things that come together. It's telecommunication, it's information technology, it's analytics, it's intelligence, all of these mixed together that actually address all of these things, but now we're having an infrastructure that is alive, an infrastructure that senses, an infrastructure that talks back at you. For the first time, you will know whether you're using more water than your neighbor, whether you're using more water than a benchmark, which is either the UN or the World Bank, and maybe an app that gives you a smiley face at the end of the day. You saved water. You use less electricity. For the first time, you're going to engage with your infrastructure, and your infrastructure is going to engage with you, and you will know what your role is and how you can contribute. This is where technology is affordable, technology is commodity, storage is commodity, computing power is commodity, and we can visualize it in a way that we just basically intuited. We thought we were doing well, but now you will know. And benchmarks play a big role in how you want to become smart. John touched on something which probably is very important for you all in California, because true everywhere. Singapore limits the number of cars you can buy. So if you want to buy a car, you have to go find a car, destroy it, give the certificate of destruction so you can bring a new car in, because this is how they limit what you can do in the city. So they want people to go into public transit. Whether it's my project in Hong Kong, which is the #1 public transit in the world, we were helping them think through how they can even go further. We're in Dubai. There are buildings left and right, but they're not expanding the road. So if you take a building that is 30 stories tall, each floor has the ability of parking 12 cars. You multiply that by 35, you add up 3 meters times, and then you've got a 2-kilometer blockage before any car has moved. So you have to work out the algorithm, how fast each car has to move before you can clear a building. But you put 6 buildings together, you don't move the size of the infrastructure, you're asking for problems. So people are asking, how do we deal with mobility? It's no longer transportation, it's mobility. Vision. Leadership is critical. You need to have a platform, and the city needs to think through the elements. Now, this chart's going to get complicated, but this is just to kind of give you an idea that for a city to go digital and smart on the issue of mobility is complex. What is smart land use? Transit-oriented development. Is there a plan? Are the citizens connected, engaged? Are they saying something? Is there a voice? Is there a story? Is a narrative coming out of that connected, engaged citizen? What are some of the architecture and the standards? Are we thinking about these things? Are we worrying about these things? Are they somewhere in the rules and the regulations? Urban automation analytics. Who owns that? How does this really help make better decisions, different decisions that we've made up to this today? What is the private sector engagement? Do I sell the number of rides a year instead of selling a car? Maybe I don't sell a car. Maybe just I sell a travel segment with an app. I want to go from point A to point B to point C to point D. Maybe it's not a car. Maybe I walk, then a bike, then a shared ride. Maybe I sell segments. Is there a business proposition there? Are we on the cusp of this kind of strategic business model and partnering? User-focused mobility, service, and choices. How do we make sure that everybody gets a choice and everybody is able to get to their destination? How are we constructing that journey? Do we have more than one choice, or is it always an infrastructure which is two-dimensional? A road is two-dimensional. UAVs make it three-dimensional. Moving products and services, 3D manufacturing, 4D manufacturing, make it multi-dimensional. Intelligent sensor-based infrastructure. Who owns that sensor network? Who owns the data? What's the cybersecurity around it? What's the identity management around it? Is it intelligent? How is it changing our decision-making process? What if it's not my choice? What if it's a better choice, but I'm unable to understand that this is a choice made for me, which is better for me in the long run? Can we test it out with today's urban delivery and logistics infrastructure? We did a study back in 2009 for society securing America's future energy. We're working with FedEx and the rest about a smart grid, which is green powered, because we know FedEx and UPS and DHL and other trucks only travel so many miles every day. So what if we created an infrastructure for them, so they're all green, they're all electric, and we can test it out them? What is their engagement today with the city? Maybe there's an opportunity there. Connected and autonomous. Are we willing to give up control? Cars will be part of our society one way or the other. But what's their density? That's going to change. How fast it's changed is up to us. And then finally, I talked about the grid, roadway electrification, UAVs. So we're talking about mobility. Do we believe we've got the ability and the governance today to address all these issues? The technology is there. So to make it smart, it's going to require more than this. There's a pictorial for Los Angeles in 2028, smart urban mobility. Is it possible? Can we do it? None of the things that are listed here is impossible. It's been done one way or the other across the globe. Whether China's done it, Copenhagen's done it, whether Hong Kong's done it, Dubai's doing it, our project in Riyadh is considering some of these things. Montreal is collapsing 63 different institutions into 6 to truly become a smart urban mobility hub. It's all feasible. Is this future possible? Look forward to hearing some of the ideas from the panelists today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raul. That was extremely fascinating. Thank you. And you will have an opportunity to have some question and answer with both our keynote and our featured speaker at the end of our panel. So I'm now going to introduce the first of our 3 panelists that will present individually for about 13 minutes each, and then we'll all come together for the Q&A at the end. Speaking about building a smarter Los Angeles for the future, please welcome Chief Information Officer for the City of Los Angeles, Mr. Ted Ross.
Excellent. Good morning. So I'll be able to provide, I think, a unique take on it. I run the city's information technology agency, so I'm proud to manage 420 dedicated IT professionals who deliver everything from internal networks to the city of LA to our efforts to try to improve digital equity across Los Angeles, I should say the city of Los Angeles. And we've been hearing very good definitions, very good descriptions of what a smart city is. Now I would like you to answer that question. So what I'm going to ask you to do, you can see I've got a blank canvas there. I'd like to ask you for a second to close your eyes. Close your eyes, and I want you to think into the future of what you envision a smart city to be. You waking up in that smart house, you commuting however you do to that smart job. So think about that for a second. What does that look like to you? Now go ahead and open your eyes. I'm sure for some of you it may be some kind of idyllic future, a future in which we have plenty of green space, a future in which the buildings are so optimized, the sky is blue, a little bit of clouds because there's no drought, right? And you've got our futuristic transportation. And that's a great, noble vision of what a smart city is. Some of you might take a more dystopian view. You might have closed your eyes and you thought about urban decline, buildings that are falling apart, and the issues of just so many people packed into one space. If you do, that says something about you. I'm just letting you know right now. What it means, I don't know, but just know that. And let's be honest, some of you envision the Jetsons, right? You're walking your dog on a escalator that flies through the air, right? That's what you may be envisioning. And all of you have a different take on it. If you ask the Smart Cities Council, they provide a very summarized definition of what a smart city is, one that has digital technology embedded across all city functions. Now, at the City of Los Angeles, let me tell you a little bit about how we approach a smart city. Once again, purposefully broad definitions because a smart city is a broad topic. And yes, to the statement said before, a very much a cliche marketing topic, and yet every year there's constant number of smart city forums, and everyone asks you, Ted, what's your smart city strategy? So you've got to have an answer, right? In effect, it's to be a community that utilizes technology and data, two separate things, one very much the byproduct of the other, but that uses tech and data to improve life for residents, businesses, and visitors. Three distinct customer segments: the people who live here, the businesses that operate here, and the people who visit here. Each of them have unique sets of needs, each of whom can be improved in uniquely different ways through technology and data that we utilize. How does one do that? Once again, just a very summarized approach. I'll describe a few examples in a second. I'm trying to bring a concise perspective on a very complicated issue. I'm giving it to you in 13 minutes. How does one do that? One does it in a very simplified way. It's going from analog, paper-based, human, labor-intensive processes to deliver digital processes that are also connected processes. And it does so focused on specific customer journeys. People talk about Amazon as a great vendor. It's a great e-commerce vendor. People will describe other types of vendors, Google, depending on the solution that you're looking for, or Waze. You're looking at a very specific journey. Someone who's utilizing Waze wants to get from point A to point B in the fastest possible time. If they set the settings so they don't go across dangerous intersections, they won't feel like Frogger when they do it. But the reality is, it's about digitizing the services that we provide as a city and the community that you have, and it's connecting them together. Because to simply make it digital is one thing, to connect it together is another, and to do it with a focus on the journey that you're trying to do. Finding parking, paying a bill, getting a permit, all different types of journeys. That, in our perspective, is how one implements a smart city. And one must not forget what it's built on. Cybersecurity. That's a shout out from my Chief Information Security Officer there. And the reason why is because once you convert services online, and once you connect them together, it's extremely important to secure them so that those online and connected services are used for good, to improve your life, as opposed to evil, to completely and utterly ruin your life. What do you get when you have an online connected service around mobility that gets breached? You get that, a disaster, right? So it's a fundamental component of it for us. Los Angeles does many smart things. And I work for the city of LA, so I can speak to the city of LA. The County of Los Angeles does a lot of fantastic things too. As a region, this is certainly the place to be. I think John Raoul nailed that very well. And someone born and raised in LA, I'm a homer, so I'll always say LA is great, so just know that. This is our automated traffic surveillance and control system called ATSAC. Some of you may be familiar with it, many of you probably are not. You thought traffic in LA was bad. Now, thank God for ATSAC. This, buried away in a city building in the basement, is where we get a connection of 40,000 loop detectors, all those little wires that are in the ground that you see, that you always say, let me pull on it so it makes sure my light changes for me, right? 40,000 loop detectors, 4,500 connected intersections, which means that center can control when the lights turn green versus red. They could time the lights and adjust them, near real time. 500 cameras. They all come together to improve the throughput of automobile traffic at the city of Los Angeles. Studies have found that your traffic is more than 12% reduced through the work of ATSAC. It started actually with the 1984 Olympics. But like many things in government, we never really advertise what we do. We just try to do it and quietly make things better. Vehicle speeds are increased at least 16%. There's 20 to 30% less stops, so you stop your car less often. But once again, an effort that we do in which we take the technology that we have spread out across the city of LA, and we do it to try to optimize how you get around. If a president, let's say, comes into town, we'll close intersections, open intersections, to try to once again release the congestion associated with it. If you pan out, you'll notice one thing that you will not see is a lot of people. It's algorithmic. It's something in which it's not about people manually pulling levers and adjusting traffic. Primarily, it is an algorithmic effort. In fact, we were the first city in the United States to create a partnership with Google Waze. Because while I just listed off 40,000 loop detectors and 500 cameras and 4,500, that's 1 million sensors around Southern California. So that we take an intake of Google Waze interface so that we know where you're traveling and what you're doing. It's a completely anonymized data. I don't know anything about you or you specifically, but that's additional 1 million sensors that we can then start to digest and consume to try to optimize how people get around the city. Street lighting is another great example. I'm giving you a short list of, I think, great examples of tech and how cities leverage tech. And this has to do with the reduction in electricity usage. LA was the first big city to move to LED lighting. And in doing so, we use 60% less energy every year, which accounts to $3 million of savings a year in electricity costs alone. That's 165,000 street lamps that converted over to LED. But in addition to that, 50,000 of which are connected, which means truly from a single laptop, you can turn 50,000 lights on or off and adjust the various hues, etc. The MyLA mobile app. I don't know if there are a lot of Angelenos here, but MyLA 3-in-1 mobile app. With very little advertisement, over 1/3 of all city service requests come in through a digital means now, which means if you see graffiti or if you've got potholes, whatever it may be, there's so many different areas where you can simply, through your app, 24/7, without ever having to call a call center, you can go ahead and submit your service request, and if you sign up, we'll let you know when we fulfilled it. Once again, creating that digital engagement with you. So you don't have to call our 311 call center. You can if you'd like, but it's, once again, an increasingly popular way. We were the first major city to do an Alexa skill, so we have an LA City skill. And why would we do something like that? Why would we code an Alexa and try to get onto your Echo? Because in a world, or in a city of over 4 million Angelenos, you are not connecting and engaging with your city in physical means, you will do so in digital means. So it's extremely important for us to connect with you where you're at. Right? In LA, we're known for a variety of things. We're known for traffic, we're known for great weather, we're known for celebrities, but we're also known to some extent for an apathetic attitude. Right? How long did we go without NFL teams? Right? And at the heart of it, and you know, I'm sure there's various experts who'd weigh in different ways, at the heart of it, it's because we didn't really care. Right? Right? We can go up and ski, we can go down and surf, we've got great museums, we've got great food, we've got a lot to do around here. And it's no slight to football, and I'm a football fan, but the reality is only LA could go that long without a football team. And kind of be bothered, but kind of like, I'll go ahead and have my hummus, right? I'm born in LA, so I can make LA jokes all day long. And I work for the city of LA, so I'm like twice over a homer. But it's extremely important because the way we're going to connect with residents is where they are. And someone with an Echo inside of their living room means that I can provide through the LA City skill, I can say, hey, what's going on in council now? I'm not going to necessarily watch council. I have a job. I'm not going to go visit council. But what's coming up in council? Could it be regarding cannabis regulations or some other type of topic? And we have consumed, curated information that'll tell you what the events are of the week and what's going on the day. Or what's happening in your neighborhood, what's going on in your library, what your local park is doing. And we're working in the directions that you can make your 311 service requests so you can tell us where that pothole is or where the graffiti is, and we'll resolve it for you, and you can do it from the comfort of your living room. One of the largest deployments of body-worn cameras. So on the public safety side, we all remember all the videos in which there was either a real or a perceived abuse of police power. And how did we see it? We saw it through someone's smartphone. It's kind of a shaky camera, right? Some teenager has a shaky camera and they're showing it. Well, now police officers have brought their own smartphones and they put it right there on their chest to provide visibility and transparency into that incident, into that encounter, to hold both citizen and officer alike accountable. And one that I really liked is a project that we're doing right now in regards to street sweepers. We all know, if you live in LA, and it really almost in any city, that for at least a couple hours, 2 to 4 hours a week, you can't park somewhere because the street sweeper needs to go by. And if the street sweeper came 5 minutes into that window, you still can't park there for 4 hours. Am I right? That's an analog business model. But we live in a world in which we're highly digitized. So with GPS on street sweepers, and with someone signing up either on web or through the mobile app, we're rolling out a pilot this year where we will notify you and say, guess what, street sweeper passed, you can now park on the street. It doesn't matter what the signs say, you won't get a ticket. Once again, it's about digitizing your experience. And if you're someone who lives in an apartment building and you cannot park on that side of the street, you understand just how painful that is. Or if you're someone who received a lot of tickets, you understand how painful that is. But to be a fully digital and connected smart city is much more than individual technology use cases. It's about an integrated experience, and we're very familiar with that. So when asked to say what LA looks like in 2028, that's a loaded question. And we saw a lot of really good input there on really what the future has to offer. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to show you a quick comparison in a few different areas. And I want to first start back in 2008, 10 years ago, today in 2018, and then what 2028 has to offer. In 2008, I know the images are small, I apologize. If you needed a city service, you had to call a call center. Today, you could use your mobile app. Well, in 2028, by far, will be voice-enabled. One of the greatest features you saw over and over again at Consumer Electronics Show this year was that everything was voice-enabled, which means you talk to your refrigerator, you talk to your Echo, or your Google Home, or whatever you're using, you talk to Siri, and you interact with your city that way, which means you engage and iterate and get it through that manner. Transportation, you may have bought a car like that 10 years ago. Today, you can get one where you can take your hands off, right, at your own risk. And 10 years from now, we'll certainly have autonomous vehicles, right? The obvious answer, cars will be driving themselves, and we'll do this and we'll do that. But I think more importantly are those two other images up there. We will have unified wayfinding, which means it's not so much about a car and how your traditional mobility choice is. It's about getting from point A to point B and us having very streamlined manners, whether it's a universal payment system to pay for your Uber, your bus, your train, whatever it may be, and a shared, unified wayfinding system, because you simply need to get from point A to point B, and how you get there is almost irrelevant. And then how will one watch the Olympics? Always the big question. 10 years ago, you might have a nice television. Today you could use, tablet, app, whatever it may be. But in the future, it's really about engagement. It's about AR, VR. And the image that's there on the bottom right, it's actually getting cameras onto athletes themselves in clever little ways, so you actually experience it. But to close, when it's all said and done, a smart city is truly a blank canvas. And one thing I think I want to reiterate is that the innovation and the technology will be there. This has stopped being an innovation conversation. There's going to be so many cool things coming out of so many different cities and so many different counties and so many different governments. That's not the conversation. There's a very different conversation. I think that is around legacy. For those who may remember, I would assert that the greatest legacy of the 1984 Olympics was the LA 84 Foundation. It was the fact that hundreds of thousands of kids could participate in youth sports. Over $250 million was invested to help improve accessibility to sports and participation in sports, to build self-esteem and teamwork and coordination and good health, et cetera. I believe in 2028, the focus will be around digital equity. We are, as President Hagan stated, we are increasingly moving into a world that is a digital economy in which the haves and the have-nots are really about access. In Los Angeles, a third of households do not have broadband connectivity at home. In some communities, like in South LA and Watts, it's over 50%. I believe the legacy of the 2028 Olympics will not just be a great, profitable Olympics, but it'll be our intent to bring every community together so they are fully competing in that world to come. Because as we automate our society, as we digitize our society, we need to bring together all of society to participate in that, or we're going to have a wealth of whole new problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And the next time you're late and you need all green lights, Ted Ross, you're going to get a bunch of phone calls. I think you're the most powerful man in the universe right now. Our next speaker is no stranger to building for the future. Having led the teams that delivered London, Rio, Tokyo, and now the Los Angeles Olympic master plans, please welcome Executive Vice President and Global Sports Leader for AECOM, Mr. Bill Hanway.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you very much. And we've heard great information from Raul, from Ted, from John, and Mr. President Hagan already about the future of smart cities, but I wanted to touch a little bit more and focus on what we're actually going to do for the Olympic Games. So you may have heard we actually won the Games in 2028, which is a start of an achievement, but equally important where Paris was once our arch enemy, where they are now our closest friends. And Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Hidalgo are actually very good friends, and we're looking very closely to working closely with them. We both had parties down in Lima, Peru. We were allowed to go back and forth, and if I'm being honest, Paris had better food and wine possibly, but we had better music and tequila, and you can tell which one ended up better. So why Olympics, why in LA, and why in 2028? There's a history of success and failure scattered throughout the Games. I was able to work and had the privilege of working in London for 10 years to see that process all the way through. Had 6 years in Rio, saw a lot of the challenges there, a couple of years in Tokyo, and now the past 3 years working closely with the LA 28 team. And we can take and learn from lessons throughout history. But I think the one key factor that we need to address is this is a 20-year period of economic activity globally spanning from 1995 to 2015. The Olympic Games are delivered on a 4-year cycle. There's nothing you can do about that. You cannot delay the Games, and that's regardless of what's happening in the global economy. If you look at that London number in 2008, where that big red dip is actually when we tendered all of our contracts. So we ended up with best prices, the best construction teams, and then we were able to take credit for the huge success of the legacy as the economy rocketed for the following 4 years. We had exactly the opposite issue in Rio. So what do we take from that to ensure that we don't end up in the same situation in LA? And in that 10-year period, we can pretty much guarantee that there will be an economic downturn. And so how do we deal with that? So one of the issues is why in LA? We believe that there are very, very strong criteria. First and foremost, we believe in the Olympic movement and what it stands for. We know that there are issues of corruption, of doping, a lot of issues that are sitting out there in the Olympics. But at its core, the idea of human achievement drives an ideal that I think is still very powerful and one that we have to respect. The idea of engagement to ensure that all the local communities are engaged in the process that we deliver is important for us, and certainly at the forefront of Mayor Garcetti and his team's ideas. Using the resources that we have here in Los Angeles, we don't have to build a single new venue, which already reduces risks that are evident in many other cities. And of course, unite. We have challenges globally. There are very diverse opinions on how this country is going to move forward into the future, but the Olympics, in its own small way, has an opportunity to unite opinions and ideas. We've heard a lot about smart cities. AECOM works a lot in the built environment, but we fully appreciate the integration and the necessities of looking at technology, the financial aspects of smart cities, but also government policies, and we've heard how strong the support is from Ted and others in the government, in the county, and in the city. We look at the concept of a smart city not being independent of any other entity. It is about the integrated approach to project execution, and that filters into the way that we're looking at delivering the Olympic Games in 2028. So what are the key 4 criteria that we've been charged with by both Casey Wasserman and Gene Sykes, and of course with the mayor's support, are those 4 there. If we're going to deliver successful games, we have to minimize risk, maximize that experience, harness technology and the creativity that's inherent in Los Angeles, and deliver a positive legacy. So what does that mean? It means using our existing venues. To think that Staples Center would host the finals of the men's basketball and the women's basketball at the end of 2028, of course, makes sense. So we've seen Brazil playing the U.S. in the finals as a starting point of our conversation. Technology, we cannot determine entirely what technology is going to be or how it's going to change over the course of the next 10 years, but there are component parts that we feel very strongly about, and it is, as John pointed out, starting with the supercomputers we have in our hand. Everything we will do will be digital. You'll get your tickets on your phone or whatever digital piece of equipment that you have. You will have your location of where you're staying, the most efficient means of public transportation to get to your event. All that will be on your phone, and that will be the way that we design the games and how we implement a successful one. We've also had to take a huge position in terms of formalizing our design much earlier in the process than we have before to ensure that we're reducing risk. So KPMG did an independent audit of our work to ensure that the prices and costs that we put forward are consistent and true, and they came back in full support of the work that we had done. But what will change? 10 years is a long time. We started the bid 3 years ago. So one of the key components is Measure M. Why did we choose to delay and support a delay to 28? There are a lot of reasons for that, but it also allows us to deliver and implement a lot of what Measure REM stood for. In the map on your right-hand side is the 1984 public transport map. That is the single black line that runs from north to south. In 2028, we have a real city. Public transportation that touches every single component of our games, but every single neighborhood in Los Angeles. As we then overlay our concept design, which is about a series of 4 sports parks, we're actually engaging the city from the valley down to Santa Monica on the coast to take care of the beaches, through Stub Hub, adjacent to Dominguez Hills University campus in Carson, all the way down to Long Beach. So it's not just about an LA Games, it's about this entire region games and the success that can be driven by using all the existing facilities and assets that we have in hand. So if we take the downtown core, which is where we're sitting in now, we have 13 different events, but one of the big component parts and changes that'll occur is the Los Angeles Convention Center with Tom Fields is here and Don Liu. It is about their investment in terms of creating something for the future. 1 million square feet of contiguous convention center space will be an important part of the design that we do. So this is a plan. It's kind of hard to read from the scale, but this identifies a concept. We're going to have 6 different venues within a secure boundary. So once you're inside there, there'll be areas for food and beverage. There'll be an opportunity to get secondary tickets. So if you've never seen a taekwondo match or a fencing event, and you've already got a ticket for basketball and you're on the site enjoying some food, you will get a text message saying there's 3 tickets available and you can get them and buy them right there and go right in. So the idea of using public transport, creating destinations, and ensuring that that is a continuous way of enjoying the games is part of our plan. Another part, as we said, is John mentioned that it's all about people for smart cities. So is there an opportunity to take a city street and create one of the new great streets in an urban environment? So can Figueroa Corridor transform for what it is now into one where public transport is a priority, cycle lanes, pedestrian movement, different types of shops? Can we leverage the concept of the 2028 games into making better streets? If we look at another component part, which is down at the southern end of the downtown core, we're looking at the Coliseum, which was used in 32-84, now in 2028, the new LAFC football stadium. It's a great story. There's nothing more sustainable than reusing an existing facility. The games were used here in 1932 in that configuration, which is still very recognizable to this day. In 84, we had a huge celebration, once again, a huge success for Los Angeles. And in 2028, USC is committed to building an advancement in the stadium, which is $270 million investment. But we have to come in and add some more, because what has happened over the years is the football field itself was dug into the bowl, which doesn't allow us to fit a modern day athletics track. So we're coming in with a $130 million investment to put in a temporary track that's built 5 meters above the playing field. It takes up about the first 20 seats. What that allows us to do is to put in a new field, but also build things underneath. So some of the warm-up facilities will be underneath. And because this is LA, if you remember the real Coliseum in the movie Gladiator, our athletes will be coming up through the ground to accept their medals. So there's always a little bit of Hollywood in every story that we tell. We're also building that right now. AECOM is constructing it so that we no excuses about whether it's finished in time, or we will be penalized. So what could possibly go wrong in such a plan like this that we've spent so much time and effort in doing? As you can see down on the corner, the stadium, one of the key rules of hosting an athletic event is you have to have all your warm-up facilities within walking distance, so the athletes train, warm up, go right into the event and perform to their maximum, so that we've built a temporary warm-up stadium. Because LA is so successful, that site, of course, is turning into the Lucas Museum. Now, on one part of this, we're extremely happy for the museum to be here in Los Angeles, and a huge success for Mayor Garcetti, but it also means now we have to rethink how we're going to deliver those component parts. So these are good things for the city, slight hassle for us, but in general, it just reconfirms that the city is on a huge upswing. So I'm going to close by trying to show a video that sort of captures the spirit of Los Angeles, and is one that we use to try and just describe what it means to be an Angelino.
There's so many different cultures represented here. so many different ethnicities represented. LA can be anything you want it to be. Learn, no matter where you look. To have the Olympics here and to have so many different cultures represented would be a beautiful story to tell.
Okay, thank you very much.
Wow, that is so cool. Thank you for that. I like that LA County's Olympic readiness is in the hands of AECOM, so thank you. Building a digital campus of the future and training the future planners of this region is vital to the development of smart cities. Please welcome Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at Cal State Dominguez Hills, Chris Manriquez.
So I know what half the room is thinking, God, I hope who has to follow AECOM, right? Well, here's the guy. So welcome and thank you for Cross Campus for hosting this in the LA EDC. This has been wonderful along with the entire relationship across these multiple topics. Every time I show up to this, I think to myself, there were 10 more things to add, and Carrie has to quiet me down and say, just stay in the back, just stay in the back. So without further ado, I'm going to start here. So my context is a little bit different. We certainly are to riff on what Kobe was saying. We are one of the places to look for learning. And we are fostering, navigating, and improving that community, region, and nationally and globally where we're going with generally in society as well as technology. So my focus is more along the smart campus. And many speakers before me have talked about some of these core points. I'm going to skip the agenda. As a good academic, I always have an agenda. So smart city, smart campus. There's a lot of parallels between these. For a long period of time, campuses have been similar to cities. We may offer services in larger contexts or smaller contexts than what cities do, but there are often parallels between these. This has grown only in larger extent as technology transformation and different services have evolved. So looking at this as we move forward, what you're looking at here, and I'm going to be talking about, is one university's attempt to become context independent with technology. We heard that strain through all of the presenters today, that really, if you're really focusing on just one particular thing to deliver, you're missing out on the platform sort of perspective, which is what you really have to maintain to move forward. So some of those drivers in that area that we're looking at is getting called entrepreneurial and innovative across all lines. We're all called to do that, regardless of commercial entity, business, higher education. And we're actually looking beyond the transactional, right? We're looking at the more strategic. How do we get this service in the hands of people to be able to utilize that service in ever-growing and ever-efficient ways, but ways that can continue to evolve? And then in addition to that, we're impacting all verticals, right? It doesn't matter what vertical you're in, you're impacted by the digital. And that has an alignment for us that we'll get to show here in a second. So on the technology side, what we're seeing is the growth with that context independence is the growth of those systems and those transmission technologies across all verticals. That allows us to actually align across different firms with the university, across businesses with the university. So when we begin to talk with each other about certain things, digital transformation becomes a bit more common. So what that allows us to do is be able to start taking things that may have worked previously in a franchise that sells sandwiches and be able to take those and move those into higher education. Or looking at what has been done in the higher education space or at the city of LA and say, you know what, that works for us. Obviously there's tweaking, there's modification that gets done, but that transferability between groups becomes enormous. And this is huge because these projects that we can collaborate on and work together on continue to grow as that evolution moves. So what about us in higher ed? In higher ed in specific, we're looking around 3 transitions that have occurred. One is digital pathways. You might think that, oh, students register online, they go to a mobile app, that's clearly understood. But what about the rest of the services, right? As a person who's responsible for digital infrastructure, I'm looking at the back end of the taco service as well as the textbook. So spanning the entire university on those systems that are provided, how do we get at a common sort of interface and a common understanding for students and an experience around the institution? Second thing, looking at university operations, right? We've all heard the word agile presented and those sorts of discussions that go on around agile. It is significantly more than a development interface. It's a way of interacting amongst human beings, right? Iterative methods of discussion going around small delivery rather than large waterfall packages. And that sort of discussion that goes on where there's constant iteration on development contributes to the rapid pace of change that's actually out there. The third component, and looking at our technology vendor partnerships, these change as well because no longer are we looking for fixes around one specific item. We're looking across the university and across the institution on how does this make an impact to our educational mission, which is at the foundation of everything we actually do. So why Dominguez Hills and why now? One of the largest drivers behind this is because we're in a master plan redesign process. And if you've been to the campus today and you look at this map, you're saying to yourself, there's a lot of open space that isn't on that map anymore. Well, that's the plan. And looking into that development for areas for residential, for areas for business, synergies developed with the university itself and those who locate there. Building out services for the students and student centers and looking at what that's actually done. This process is currently undergoing now. So, as part of these drivers, there are 3 key pillars inside, for us, the Smart City, Smart Campus movement, and this is looking at organizational governments to start off. It's having that discussion at the core that says, what are we trying to actually do before we proceed here around a point sort of project? How do we actually look at that? And then what is that change in our own sort of baseline going to be? So as things continue to evolve with change, we can adapt with that change. Again, context independent. So on our campus, what that has meant is for everything that we're starting to bring up and everything we're looking at, there's a physical presence service and a digital service that's in parallel. And then what that allows us to do is be able to say that we can actually scale. Now that's not new to anybody who's doing technology, but the approach to this is new because we're looking at business process to begin incorporating many of these things together. Second thing is, similar to many countries that have jumped in technology using cellular phones rather than building out a telephone services infrastructure, we're using some of the newer technologies that are coming out, similar to the broad description of smart cities, using the cloud, right? And its hybrid modalities and its full SaaS modalities and its infrastructure modalities. Sorry, I'm a CIO, that's the language that I speak. And then finally, the last component is we're seeing changes in workplace, even if you're within technology. The jobs are shifting. So you used to have an old DBA, database administrator. Those are changing to architectural sort of design jobs. Interacting with